Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the WRRAP podcast with me, Lee G. Joining me, as per usual, are Harley and Jamie. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good
Hello,
evening.
good evening.
And joining us in the Osprey's hot seat this week is Nick from the Pod Cymru podcast. How are you, Nick?
I'm all good, thank you very much. Well, despite the weekend.
We got plenty of time to talk about that, mate. Don't worry. We will delve into the Ospreys happily later. So before we crack on with the pod and discuss all of that kind of stuff, and the reason that Nick is here and the reason that James isn't is I'm only going to touch on this quickly, and it's for all the people throwing a bit of shade at us on socials. Okay, James said some stuff last week on the pod that was out of line and it wasn't right. And he did apologize for it, and I take some responsibility for it because I should have edited it out. But we had a bugger of a time with connections and this, that, and the other last week. So I'll be honest, by the time I'd finished editing all the other bits, I'd forgotten to edit that bit out. Okay, so it went out live as it was on the day after. Yes, it did cause a bit of offence. James was a little bit mortified that that he'd caused the offence, and he could totally see why. The long and short of it was, I said, let's take a little break, have a bit of time off, and James kind of went, actually, I think I've reached the end. And it was James that decided to step away. In hindsight, I think it's probably the right decision for him. As we all know, when you've got a young family and you're starting a new job and all of those kind of things, and doing these pods can completely take over your life and just become it becomes you. And at that point, you just kind of got to go, right, okay, enough's enough. So, there's no ill feeling between us and James. I've spoken to him a couple of times this week. James is probably going to do a little bit of social media stuff, analysis and all of that kind of malarkey. And will probably come back as a guest at some point, probably 3 or 4 years now, when Ospreys rack up their next win. So, no, at some point, James will come back on as a guest and all of that kind of stuff. And there's genuinely no issues between any of us. So wind your necks in on social media, because this stuff happens. At some point, I will leave. At some point, Harley will leave. At some point, Jamie will leave. At some point, Nick will leave. Do you know what I mean? This will go on beyond us. So don't worry about it. That's the way it happens. Right. So that's put to bed. One other thing before we start with everything else, so we ran a competition with the Ospreys to win tickets for the Ospreys and Scarlets derby, which is coming up this weekend. The winner of that was Anthony. Anthony, there's an email waiting for you. Reply to that email. I'll be in touch. We'll do some social things. We did it for the Scarlets this weekend. That's worked really well. So the guy that won the Scarlets tickets this weekend's done some stuff on socials. Worked really well. Everybody loves it. It's fantastic. Change your pants time. So it's all going really well. So Anthony, look in your inbox, mate, because there's an email waiting for you. Right. So we're going to skip all the usual stuff. We're skipping drink of the week. We're going to skip news desk, and we're going to head straight into reviews of the weekend. So Nick, you have the pleasure, because Ospreys were first on the board last weekend. So you have the pleasure of talking us through your thoughts on the Ospreys game last Saturday. All yours, mate.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't as positive going into this game as some people were on social media. I fully expected us to lose. I thought we might lose by 20 plus points. I didn't expect to lose as heavily as we did. I must be honest with you. We have a record of doing this. When we lose, we go big, as we did a couple of times last season. We lost heavily in Montpellier last December. We lost heavily to the Bulls. We have lost heavily to Leinster. I think the club have tried to put a bit of a positive spin on it. I didn't see it that way at all. I thought we underperformed, even despite the injuries. I always expected better from us. Our tackling was woeful. You can't go to France and miss a third of your tackles. And even when we did make the tackles, they were able to offload. And when a French team gets on the front foot, you really are in trouble. And all I can hope is that we put this behind us. We've got a massive week now leading up to next Saturday. I'm not convinced that we recruited well over the summer. I think there's 2 clubs recruited well, and 2 didn't. And I've heard Jamie talking about that on the Dragon's Lair as well. Also, I'm not convinced though in Williams. I think he's experienced, but that's about it. But as I say, when we're struggling this year at scrum time, if both is not playing, we're going to give away 2 or 3 penalties. The only positives I can take out of the game were that it was good to see Rhys Henry back on the field. And I thought he made a difference when he came on at tight head. And also Will Griffiths, who's one of those players, like many others, unfortunately, in all our clubs, who've been plagued by injuries and have hardly played over the last 2 years. It is strange how it happens to certain players, and it's just a bad luck. So those are the only positives I can take out of the game. We were physically not in the game, and our attack was, as it normally is, pretty poor.
Well, I will give you another positive from somebody on social media. So they live further away, so they would have had to pay for the game, and they decided not to pay for the game. So they saved themselves a couple of quid, went down the pub, and spent the money on beer instead. So there's always a silver lining somewhere. So it was a hard weekend being an Ospreys fan. I appreciate that, but I said to one of my mates on the weekend, who was Scarlet's fan and who was getting a bit cocky, and I went, "Let's just remember that that's where we were last year, and these things have a habit of turning. The wheel will turn, and you stick with it, and it comes back." So yeah, we're not going to dwell on the Ospreys loss, mate, but it's one of those ones you've got to try and find a positive where you can.
Just
So
remember, losing away to Montpellier against a fully loaded side is a lot different to losing at home to a pub side. I mean, the Georgian national team.
at
least you've. I know we're going to go into it later, but at least you've redeemed yourself for that one.
Yeah. Right. Let's have a chat about Cardiff then, Harley. So plastic pitch is ripping through the squad. Tell us what you thought about your
Our most recent injuries, the major ones. Harry Millard was on grass away in Lyon. Mason Grady was in the Principality, which is a grass pitch. Actually, a lot of Ewan Stevens was in the training on grass. I said, this grass nonsense needs to go. It's too dangerous. Plastic everywhere. Moving on to the actual game itself, I think, look, if all you saw was like the halftime and the full-time score, you wouldn't necessarily get a game. So Cheetahs came out the blocks with a point to prove that they want to be in the ULC, very aggressive. They had a huge wind behind them, so Cardiff were struggling to exit, and then that sort of just kept them pinned. I mean, I think we were very lucky that the Cheetahs kept dropping the ball in the last pass. They were James Botham does really well to sort of hold up a Cheetahs maul to and then as it sort of moves on, things start to look better. More positive injury side of news. Liam Belcher came back as if he hadn't left, which is great for us because I think cycling between Dav Hughes and Evan Lloyd was causing some problems, and seeing Talupi Falatu do 50-odd minutes. And other people saying he's looking back to his best. I don't think he's quite there, but he's looking a lot fitter, a lot happy. And someone did point out it's the first time they've seen Josh Adams play without any tape on him in a couple of years. So it's nice that particularly those two have been given extended breaks and they're not being forced into games too soon, which I think is part of the problem why we see these players who pick up repeated injuries. And it is usually because they're just not allowed that extra 2 or 3 weeks because we've got small squads, small budgets. We can't afford our best players to not play. But I mean, it was a bonus point win. We got 6 points out of 10. That's about par. We should probably go through on that. whether or not we get any home knockouts, that's going to be. I think that's going to depend on some very good a very big win over Connacht, and Perpignan away. But I mean, mostly positive.
Are you worried, Harley, that you sort of tend to play in fits and starts? You sort of tend to put 10, 15 minutes together each half, which is better than not putting it together. But I don't know. They don't seem to be able to put a whole performance together.
Yeah, it's worrying, but also at the same time, it's almost. I mean, we talked about the Cardiff way. I'm starting to think that and a line out that sort of rolls the dice before we go whether or not it's going to work or not. Just seems to be how Cardiff play. I've almost started to accept it, and it's just hoping that our purple patch is good enough to avoid the brown patch.
Yeah.
Be honest, Ali, that's considering that you said that was a positive review. That's the most miserable positive review I think you've done. I think some of your
I think you've got to remember what all the Cardiff Central pods were like around about this time last year.
I think,
right.
sorry, the point I made about recruitment, I think you recruited well. I do feel you rely a lot on McNally to strengthen your pack. And if you lost him to injury, and Teddy Williams is a good player, I rate Teddy Williams. But I think if you had the injuries we've got in the second row, I think you'd be back to the old take Cardiff up front and you win the match.
I mean, I'll be honest, if you look at the Lyon game and particularly with like the Glasgow and Edinburgh games as well this season, which we've lost, a lot of it was just being bullied up front and then picking on Sheedy in defence was just our two weaknesses. I do think we've gotten better. And I think Teddy is grown into that more enforcer lock role more. He's still got a way to go. Listen, me and Dan have been talking about the pods, is that McNally gets really tired. It's starting to look very tired already this season. And the longer he stays on when he's looking tired, the more he gives away daft penalties. So, like things like jumping into the line out, or he'll commit, or he'll cheat into a ruck and things like that. And Cardiff have got a reputation for doing that, so you get picked up on it. Similar to Ed Byrne getting penalised a lot more than he would have at Leinster, because Cardiff had the reputation, Leinster didn't. So the rest are looking for it.
Talking about stupid penalties and silly cards, let's talk about Scarlet's Black Lion, because I'll be fair, they made it easy for us because some of their discipline was really, really poor. And then we thought, what, who can play at that game? Well, if you're going to do some stupid shit, we can show you how to do it properly because we got proper history on that stuff. But I thought we were excellent. For large parts of that game, we shut them down. They came back about 55 minutes, and I just put pressure on us for 10 minutes. And even in that period, I think they crossed the line 3 times, and we held them up twice. So it was encouraging. It was good. There's some big boys. These Georgians are big boys, and I think the start of the game they wanted to try and throw the ball around, and you've got these big hulking masses of meat going, "Give me ball, I run at wall." Is good, and they never gave him the ball until like 50 odd minutes. So, yeah, a lot of positives in that game. I thought Vandermeer at hooker was superb. Ellis Mee is showing why he's been brought in. Max Douglas, yet again, just really, really running the show. And Josh McLeod was just bloody everywhere. You had to check there was only one of him on the pitch at one point. Archie Hughes back from injury. Fafita back from injury. JR back from injury. And they all had injury return games, if you like. I think Fafita probably had the best of them, but Archie Hughes got the try right at the death and all that kind of stuff. And Joe Roberts had a 50-50 game, but it was still just having back. So it was really good. I didn't have to throw my slipper at the telly once. So, improvements where they are, boys. Improvements where they are.
I think, as clubs, we're struggling for recruitment. I can't imagine these guys being on huge wages in Georgia. They would strengthen our squads. Some of those boys would certainly be very good to strengthen squads if we're allowed to sign foreign players.
Well, we've said that the last couple of years, haven't we?
I think the problem is, so saying, I've talked to a friend of the pod, Francisco Isaac, absolutely fantastic for looking at that sort of level below the Six Nations teams in Europe. A lot of these Georgian players, they're eyeing up the big Pro Day Derby top 14 contracts. And, this is almost used as a sort of hotbed to nurture the next stars. I think, like Matt Carver, the 10. I'm surprised he hasn't picked up. Also, I think the president of Georgia is a very, very wealthy man, and he's bankrolling Black Lion and the Georgian national team. So I think as well, they're probably on a lot more than we were expecting.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
But it's definitely, I mean, it would definitely be worth a marquee sign now. So, if we're taking the comments some people have made about fewer non-worth qualified players as we want less but more impactful, like, you want that actual star, then maybe it is worth putting in. Like, if we can unearth a younger Dimitri Arhip somewhere as well, that would be great.
Yeah.
Like, if we could all have one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time he's finished, maybe we will have all had Dimitri Arhip at one point or another.
If Harley doesn't return after Christmas, it's because the president of Georgia has found his address and has popped round to have a quiet word with him. So stay safe.
The
over
president
Christmas.
of Georgia would be very happy with my opinion of Georgia Rugby, where I said I want the away trip to Tbilisi.
Right, let's move on to the proper game of the weekend, because this was the one that we were all waiting for, and all the rest of us had confidence that this was coming, James, and you were a little bit kind of browbeaten by the hope killing you previously. So talk us through the mighty victory away in Newcastle, mate.
Yeah, huge result. Huge result. The Dragons really needed that. For two reasons, really. First of all, it keeps their hopes in Europe alive. Had we lost that, it's very unlikely we're going to get out of the pool. And secondly, going into the derbies, it gives us a little bit of confidence. If you're going into the derbies on the back of 8 straight losses, you're not going to inspire much confidence or momentum, are you? So, I was really, really pleased. I was chuffed, actually. I think what really pleased me the most about this game was the youngsters. So Tia has mixed and matched in this tournament. He's played a lot of youngsters. I think he made 9 changes from the side and lost to Montpellier. So we had a very young backline. Only Angus O'Brien, I think he's 30, isn't he? But the rest of the back line, they were boys in their early 20s. And Hugh Anderson, obviously, is the big talking point. He was excellent. I think it's easy to see why Wales have called him up to have a look at him, in training, because he's very talented. He's rapid. He's got great feet. He was excellent. He was player of the match, rightly so. Very impressive stats, 186 metres made, 6 defenders beaten, 13 carries, 1 try. I just thought he was outstanding. A word for 36-year-old Dan Lydiate on his 100th Dragons appearance. He rolled back the years with a typical Dan Lydiate style performance. He was excellent. He did not stop. He was an absolute machine, putting in massive hits, ended up being Dragons' top tackler. It was just a team effort. It was a really, really good team effort. I think what me and Gav talked about the Dragons today was how clinical we was, and that's been an issue for the Dragons going forward. When we get into the 22, we panic, or we make the wrong decisions, or we're not patient enough. But everything clicked, everything went right. And it wasn't perfect by any means, but it was a very un-Dragons-like performance in the fact that everything we did mostly went right. We didn't do anything stupid, which was the case against Montpellier in several games this season. A word for Aaron Wainwright as well. That was, back to his best. He was outstanding. He would have been my player of the match if I had to choose. He was just at the heart of everything. He was involved in most of the tries, scored a great try as well. That's the Aaron Wainwright we want to see, because I do feel that he was rushed back from injury. We didn't see the best of him for Wales in the autumn. He wasn't poor by any means, but I don't think he looked 100%. And again, even against Cardiff and Montpellier, again, I didn't think he looked at his best, but this was Aaron Wainwright at his best. And that's what we want to see as Wales supporters. We want to see that. So absolutely delighted. Another young man that caught my attention was 19-year-old Nick Thomas. So he's a young lock from Newport. And he came on the field after just 25 minutes to replace Steve Cummins, who went off of HIA. And he was absolutely terrific. He got from a mountain of work. In the 72nd minute, he made a huge turnover in the Dragons 22, which I think won us the game. I think Gavin said on the radio commentary as well, if he doesn't make that turnover, Newcastle would have scored. It was a massive moment. And he just looks a really good prospect. And all the young boys, Anderson, Thomas, Minto, Ollie Andrew was excellent. Shea Hope, Shea Hope had a sticky start to begin with, showed a little bit of inexperience, made a couple of errors, but he grew into the game. as it went on, and then Rodri coming off the bench, then showing his experience and leadership. And I thought that was a really good move to have Rodri there on the bench. Probably should have played against Montpellier the week before, but it was important he was there. I suppose the only downbeat thing for me really was George Knott. So he had a really nasty head injury and he was stretched it off. The Dragons tweeted after the game he was up and about in the changing rooms afterwards, which is good news, but it looked really, really nasty. They did go to the TMO for foul play, but there was no foul play. It was just bad tackle technique. And it's a real shame. We're looking a bit light now at lock because Screech is out, although we should be back for Cardiff. Obviously, Cummins went off. George not injured, so I'm not quite sure how we're going to look at lock for the Cardiff game. But yeah, I'm just chuffed. I'm just chuffed because we really needed a win. And you could feel the relief at the final whistle. The players were delighted. You could see that there is a togetherness in this team. And yeah, it's a win. I'm very, very happy. Onwards and upwards. But let's hope now the Dragons can build on it, because this is what the Dragons are not very good at. They get the odd win here and there, but what they need to do now is build on this, get a couple of victories, get a bit of momentum. This can't be a one-off now. They have to build on it. But yeah, very happy. It's a win. And I don't get to say that very often on here or on Dragons Lair, do I? So yeah, good stuff.
I thought you looked better than Angus O'Brien at 10. He wasn't perfect, but he gave you a little bit more direction than perhaps you've had so far this season.
I agree. Yeah, I prefer Angus at 10 than Lloyd Evans. I've said many times, I've been disappointed with Lloyd Evans. I like Lloyd Evans a lot. He was good at Gloucester, but I don't think he's the fly-half that we need. And I guess that'll be interesting now against Cardiff and even against the Scarlets. What does Tia do now? Because does he keep Angus at 10 and have Hugh Anderson? Because Hugh Anderson, my player of the match, was excellent. It'd be really harsh to drop him. He's made a really strong case now for starting in the derbies. Or do you bring Lloyd Evans in at 10 and put Angus back to 15? I mean, that's a conversation when we discuss the preview pods. But Tia's got some welcome selection headaches now because a lot of the young boys put their hands up. And it's really good to see. Really pleasing to see.
To be fair, that might be what the Dragons need, though. I know they've tried this reset with the youngsters before, but bleeding a few in at a time who getting the wins, keeping them there when they're confident, is that probably actually what they need. Not the Bernard Jackman of just going to get rid of all the old players and just throw the new ones in willy-nilly, a bit like Gatland's doing now. But you
got to have experience. You got to have experience there.
The good news is at least it's not a week. It's slightly longer than a week. Your turnaround, so you might have a bit of time to get some. Certainly for Steve Cummings, for some failed HGI, he might be able to get within the stand down period. George might have to do the full 12-day, but
yeah,
especially with Shane Lewis-Hughes out as well. Because obviously I know he hates second row, but at least he can do a job there.
Well, you could tell that even if you didn't see the result or you didn't know anything about that, you could just look at our WhatsApp group and Jamie didn't swear at all Sunday afternoon. It was clear there were no expletives, there was nothing in there. There was just big smiles. So yeah, we've been waiting for that one for a while, and we said we were going to celebrate it, Jim. And
yeah, but to be fair, I didn't expect it because Dragons haven't won an away game for I think it's nearly 2 years now, and let's not forget that's a Newcastle side. They've won their last 4 games at home, including Exeter Saracens. So you will get snarky people to say, "Oh, well, it's only Newcastle." No, this is an improved Newcastle team. They won their last 4 at home. It's not easy to go up there. I thought it was a really job well done.
Okay, so we're gonna have to knock it on the head there, gents. Short and sharp this evening. So just to put everything into context, we're gonna do a bit of a festive one in straight after this with a very special guest. So we're gonna preview all of the Christmas games, and then that'll pretty much be it for us until the new year. We're all going to go get ludicrously drunk. I'm off this week, so if any point during the day I want to start drinking, I can, except I've got appointments every day this week, so I can't drink until 5 o'clock minimum every day. Absolutely gutted. But we will be starting our Christmas celebrations early, so we will be back as a pod probably first week of the new year. When I say first week, kind of 6th or 7th, around about that time, so we've got something to review. So all that's left for me to say is a big thank you to Nick for stepping in tonight. Hopefully we can sort something permanent out for the new year. And other than that, guys and girls, enjoy your rugby. Have a good one. Toodaloo for now. All the best.
Right.
Ta-ra.
go.
Start.